Mid lane has historically been one of the best and most impactful roles in the game, however that has changed a lot over the years. Changes to minion waves, items, champions and changes to the early game itself has made mid lane one of the most non-interactive roles in the entire game. There are too many safe picks in the mid lane that prevent you from getting a big early game lead in a pure 1v1. So you have to think about the entire map instead of just thinking about your lane. If you're playing a champion that doesn't want to interact with anyone, you can wave clear from range and stay safe under your turret pretty much all of the time. We've all played against that one Malzahar player that never does anything in lane but clear waves and sit under turret. So how can we exploit this to our advantage? We can use more versatile champions that tick a lot more boxes, and we can basically win the game by having a lot more map impact. Here is what we want out of mid lane. We want wave clear because it's important to keep our towers up and it gives us our roam timers. We want to have big rotation impact because we want easy kills and we want to obtain a gold advantage. We want damage because that allows us to do that much easier, and we want crowd control because it allows us to still be useful if we for some reason fall behind. If we have these 4 things, then we also have agency where we can say that we control the game. These are the 5 things that will allow you to completely take over mid lane and eventually the entire game. Let's take a look at 5 champions that can easily help you climb with very little effort using these 5 pillars. We have NiKo, Twisted Fate, Vex, Tristana and Annie. What do these 5 champions have in common? They are easy to play, they have a lot of options, and regardless of what happens in game, they will always have a chance to make something happen. Let's start with NiKo. NiKo has one of the safest laning phases in the entire game. Her early game is based off of pushing the wave while harassing her opponent. Your wave clear is good, your poke damage is good, and it's very hard to get close to NiKo in order to kill her. You have your E to CC people, and you have your W to buy you time and escape. And your ult is one of the most impactful ones in the entire game. In NiKo's worst games, she will sit mid and clear waves safely all day long, but if she can take control of the game, she is one of the best gankers from the mid lane. Push your wave, rotate to bot or top or whoever that's overextending, but it's typically more worth it to move bot lane because you can get 2 kills. As long as you have your ult up, it's a free double kill or a free advantage every time you see the opportunity. NiKo is best played when she has melee assistance on her team, someone that can dive into the team fight with her and take the attention off of her. A Jarvan or a Wukong or Leona or Alistar, anything works. If your team is squishy and ranged, NiKo has less impact because you can't dive in alone or you die. If people can dive in with you, you survive longer and you get to pump out more damage. As long as you're fighting around big objectives like Dragon and Baron, NiKo will always have a team fighting advantage thanks to her kit, and it's very hard to play against her, especially if the enemy team lacks magic resistance. Then we have Twisted Fate. For me, Twisted Fate is one of the best champions in the entire game. He has everything you want, as long as you play with your brain more than your hands. His early game is the same as NiKo, you push the wave while harassing your opponent. The difference is that it's much easier to kill Twisted Fate than it is to kill NiKo, because you don't have the same safety tools. So your positioning is much more important. But it's balanced, because Twisted Fate can impact the map much faster than NiKo can. With Minion Dematerializer in your runes, you unlock the ability to one-shot your waves very early, which gives you a free timer to rotate on every time you see the opportunity. And nobody can gank a lane better than Twisted Fate. Where are we going to gank? You guessed it, bot lane. Pick your gold card, hit R, and TP behind the enemy bot lane and attack the player closest to your bot lane. Make sure to always get 1 kill for your team for your ult to be worth it, and make the rotation worth your time. If you get a kill, push the wave out, recall and go back mid and continue wave clearing while you wait for your cooldowns, and you do the same thing again. Even if Twisted Fate is behind and lacks the damage to kill someone, his map movement and gold card can still be enough to win the game. His ability to split push and escape very easily or turn a side lane 1v1 into a 1v2 means you always have the ability to control the map and win the game through better map play. The thing about Twisted Fate is that it's not about you. You are there to make sure your team is ahead. They need to carry you, but you help them get to a point where they are strong enough to do that. And then we have a champion that I very much hate playing against, Vex. Vex is a champion that serves two main functions. You wave clear and you play as a normal AP mid laner. Wave clear, poke damage, safe positioning, etc. while you wait for that big moment where you can take over the team fight. But her second function is that she completely destroys the most popular assassins like Talon, Katarina, LeBlanc because of her fear mechanic on her passive. As long as you play her correctly, you will never die versus those type of champions because they can't get on top of you and kill you. Much like the other champions we've talked about, your gameplay pattern consists of clearing the minion wave and finding roam timers that you feel are worth it. Rotate and impact the game and you will always be ahead. If you manage to hit your ult on someone, you dash to your target, you one-shot them, and you get your ult again on reset, and you keep chasing the kills down. Vex is very good against melee champions, because the value of her fear goes up. Against ranged champions, it's very unlikely for them to be within melee range of you, so have that in mind when you pick Vex. Vex loses the game when the game turns into a mage versus mage fight in the late game. She's not the best late game champion, and the longer the game goes, the less value she has. So it's important once you feel strong in the early game to make full use of her kit, find a lead in the early mid game and use that lead to end the game before the 35-40 minute mark that's considered late game, because that's when Vex starts to lose versus the Victors and the Zeras and the Cassiopeias. Now Tristana is very different to those three. Nobody pushes mid lane like Tristana does. Your E will always make sure that you have push priority, and there is only one thing that should be on your mind with Tristana, and that is take down the turret. You are very safe in your lane with your W jump and your ult knockback, so you can afford to walk up and land autos on your opponent. You want to constantly tap them as much as you can without dying, because it activates Tristana's advantages even more. If you force them to recall because of low HP, you get to hit their turret for free. You take a plate, you recall, you buy more items, and you go back and you do the same thing again. Because you are buying AD and most mid lane champions can't afford to build early armor, or they are just useless, you get to take over the lane because they can't handle your consistent poke and tap damage. The gameplay pattern is very easy. You poke with autos, you push the lane, you hit the turret, you wait for the next minion wave, you do the same thing. You poke with autos, push the lane, hit the turret, wait for the next wave. On and on and on. If they stand under the turret, you can try and hit the splash damage from your E, but be mindful of the enemy jungler and the support rotating. Those are the only real counter to Tristana mid lane outside of you just making a bad play and jumping on someone for no reason and dying. The beautiful thing about Tristana is that she does not need the early kills. The entire lane is a pressure cooker. Just keep doing the small trades and push and you will come out on top. Later in the mid and late game, you are technically just another AD carry with the benefits of more solo XP and gold. So you are very strong in team fights and you can help your team win the game just through team fighting. And now finally, somebody call LS, because it's time to talk about Annie. Annie is one of the most impactful team fighters in the entire game. Her early levels are pretty weak because she lacks the damage and her animations are pretty slow, but that completely flips on its head when Annie reaches her first full item. In the early levels, just farm. Don't focus on anything else, just make sure to grab your farm. Whenever it's free, you hit your opponent to let them know you exist and you mean business, but don't get into a full fight. However, when you get a hold of your first item, the only question you should ask is, who wants to die? Your damage ramps up like no tomorrow, and past 11-12 minutes into the game, Annie's overall win rate just keeps going up and up. Your gameplay pattern goes from playing safe and avoiding fights to simply running up to people and dropping a big nuke on their head. The majority of the champions in this game are squishy and don't like to build resistances. So as long as you can deal your damage, you will always be able to one-shot players. Annie's best friend is not Tibbers, but rather her Flash. Flash allows her to catch people who think they are safe outside of her range. If you have the damage, you can always flash into a team fight and combo the entire enemy team and just watch everyone get blown up. The only thing about Annie that's bad is that she sucks versus tankier team comps that can survive her combo, or champions that can outrange her pretty badly because they can abuse her much easier than she can abuse them. Those 5 champions can carry you in your games as long as you have those 5 original pillars in mind. It's important to always stay useful when you're playing mid lane, and that is why classes like assassins are so hit or miss. If they get ahead, life is good, and if they are behind, they are pretty much useless. With these 5 champions, you always have a chance of impacting your games and trying for the win. Let me know if you have a champion you really enjoy playing in the mid lane and why you like them. But that's going to be it for this video, and I will see you in the next one. Goodbye.